Welcome back, strong man. Personal finance. Do you want to make money from war? Do you want to make money from the military industrial complex? Do you not care about morality? Well, I got the stock for you. Yeah! In this paid video, we're going to go over the financial statements of Oshkosh, my hand wash. I almost said ball wash, but that'd be inappropriate. Anyway, Oshkosh makes a lot of stuff. They make a lot of basically heavy-duty equipment that's used in the military and in the private sector. And I have personal experience using this stuff because I'm in the military. Before we dive into it, if you want your own personalized video, you click that link, you send me $50, and I'll make a personalized video for you, and I'll keep you anonymous if you want. So let's go ahead and dive into this paid video. What is Oshkosh? Formerly Oshkosh Truck is an American industrial company that designs and builds specialty trucks, military vehicles, truck bodies, hot, tight, sweaty, ab-covered six-pack truck bodies, airport fire apparatus. I'll show you an apparatus, and access equipment. So just to get an idea of like some of the stuff this company makes, okay? They make the Oshkosh LATV, the Himmet. This is basically a heavy-duty truck. The M1083, the MATV. I've used those in Afghanistan. All sorts of different vehicles. They are pretty prevalent in the U.S. military. But they're not just military. Oh, no. They make fire and rescue vehicles. Looks like fire engines here. They have commercial business. They make a bunch of stuff, okay? So if you think of this as just a military company, it's really not. Now, it gets a lot of revenues from the military, and it's contract dependent, but it's not just the military, which is actually surprising. I thought the military would be the majority of it, you know, and like there are a lot of these vehicles. We used a lot of these in Afghanistan. I can tell you that, but it's not just military. So let's go ahead and look at the company's overview. So the stock price has done very well. I don't know if you remember this, but there was this huge conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I personally participated in that, I remember. And we used a lot of Oshkosh equipment, and we use it in our everyday military, not just for Afghanistan, especially the heavy-duty trucks. There's actually these huge trucks called HETs, H-E-T, and they literally put tanks on them that are like 60 tons, and they drive these tanks on these HETs and then drop them off. And I just got to see like a whole like company of tanks get dropped off by HET. It was pretty cool. This was in at the National Training Center during training. But yeah, Oshkosh is pretty prevalent in the military. Now, the market cap, you know, shockingly, and I'm just saying this for the first time now, is only $4.84 billion for this massive freaking company that produces a lot of stuff. Their revenue is $8.6 billion. So they're selling at a price to sales of 0.5. Their net income is $264, and they have a PE ratio of 18 and a forward PE of 13. So I guess it's cheap, I guess, you know, if you just go off PE ratios. And they got a dividend of 2.11%. Okay, dividends. So the stock price has gone up massively. I mean, insanely massively. And even over the past 5 years, well, it's been flat. I wouldn't say it's gone up massively. And it's down 17%. So I guess a lot of people are looking at this and they're like, well, you know, look at the historical performance. That's insane. And that is insane. That's an insane stock price appreciation. And then they're like, well, it's dipped, so maybe I should buy it. Well, let's look at the financials. Let's just see how the company is doing from a broad perspective. Then we'll dive into the annual report. So revenue over the last 10 years is trending upwards. Okay. I mean, you can see it's kind of variable because this company is heavily dependent on contracts. And sometimes contracts don't get renewed. Sometimes you lose contracts to competitors. But over time, their revenue has trended up, but you see it variates. Let's look at margins. Gross margin has actually been trending down recently. We could see a collapse in well, not a collapse, but definitely they're seeing a decline in gross margins. I wonder why. I'm sure the report will tell us. Operating margins are coming down. Profit margins are coming down. Free cash flow margin actually seems pretty typical. So overall, I see, pretty decent revenue growth. I mean, revenue growth is, I'm not going to say it's horrible. They are still growing revenues, but their margins have recently come under pressure. Balance sheet, we're going to skip that because we do that in every video because the balance sheet doesn't matter. I'm just kidding, because it's better on the report. Cash flows. Let's see. Operating cash flow has generally positive. That's a good thing. Let's see. Free cash flow. Where is it at? Free cash flow per share. I mean, they generally produce free cash flow, but there's obviously some quarters where they probably make heavy investments where their free cash flow goes down. Acquisition. So, okay, they make some big acquisitions every once in a while. That makes sense. And they've actually pretty significantly ramped up their capital expenditures. So they're spending a lot of money on acquisitions and capital expenditures, which means lower free cash flow now, but maybe more in the future. I don't know. So that's kind of an overview of the company. I mean, if you want to look at the ratios, very low on a price to sales standpoint, but relative to history, normal. Price to books, probably on the low end historically. Debt to equity, actually going down. Interesting. We'll see the balance sheet. Maybe we'll see the balance sheet. And their current ratio seems pretty solid. They have a dividend. They pay a dividend. And their payout ratio is generally not too wild, okay? They do some buybacks. So obviously, if they're doing buybacks and paying a dividend, they're a profitable company. But I wouldn't buy it for the dividend and the share buybacks. There's obviously other reasons. So let's go ahead and dive into the company. Let's read about it. The company is comprised of 12 industry-leading brands across 4 reportable segments: access equipment, defense, fire and emergency, and commercial. So access equipment is the largest at 48%. That's pretty crazy. Like I said, I thought military was the largest. Defense is only 26%. 13% for fire emergency, and 13% commercial. So if you think the military industrial complex is going to collapse, which it isn't, we spend a lot of money on our military. That's all I'm going to say right there. $800 and something billion a year or more. This company actually is diversified. Now, for government, the company made approximately 25%, 33%, and 35% of its net sales for fiscal year 2022, 2021, and 2020 from the U.S. government, a substantial majority of which are under multi-year contracts and programs in the defense vehicle market. Basically, all these companies compete for contracts. Sometimes they win them, and then they get money locked in for several years, and sometimes they don't win them. So it's a competitive industry, and they have competitors. But look at the sales variation. 25% came from the military or U.S. government in 2022, and just a couple of years ago, it was 35%. So you're going to see pretty big variations, and that's a potential risk factor for this company. It's pretty reliant on the U.S. government. Okay, I'm not going to say the company's about to go bankrupt and lose all its contracts, but it's pretty reliant on the U.S. government. All right, so let's keep reading a little bit more. Competitive strengths, I don't care. Let's see, they talk about their products. They did mention their competitors as I was skimming this somewhere. There's a lot of competitors. Competition. In all the company segments, competitors include small specialized manufacturers as well as large mass producers. So who competes with them in the access equipment market? Okay, what is this? Basically, it's construction equipment. In the global market, they compete with Genie Industries, Skyjack, Halut, blah, blah, blah. So there's a pretty decent amount of competition out there in the access equipment market, which is half of their revenues. Defense segment. Let's see if I can recognize some of these names. Navistar Defense LLC, General Dynamics. You ever heard of that one? AM General LLC, BAE. I've heard of them. General Motors Defense. Heard of them. There's a ton of competitors. Workhorse and Rivian. That's funny. That made me laugh. Okay. So there are a lot of competitions out there. And as we can see, they kind of go through the government defense process. Basically, these companies submit bids for contracts, and the government goes through the process of selecting whatever contract best suits their needs. And a lot of the times, you may lose. You may not win the contract. And if you don't, then you miss out on a lot of revenue, and your competitor makes a lot of revenue, okay? But overall, this company has definitely done well. I mean, like MRAPs, like that was a very commonly used vehicle overseas. And they signed a contract with the USPS recently. Fire and emergency. Obviously, there's a lot of competition out there, okay? Approximately 25 of the company's net sales for fiscal year 2022 were made to the U.S. government, a substantial majority under multi-year contracts. Accordingly, a significant portion of the company's sales are subject to risks specific to doing business with the U.S. government. Never trust the government. Including uncertainty of economic conditions, changes in government policies and requirements that may reflect rapidly changing military and political, the availability of funds, and the ability to meet specified performance thresholds. Okay? That's just something to be aware of. Okay? I'm not saying the military-industrial complex is going to go away, but it's a whole new layer. And if we start a huge war, guess what? This company will probably benefit. Okay? So I guess if you want to bet on war, then you can you can do that. So let's see. Intellectual property, environmental manner. Who cares? Who cares about the environment? Lost time. What is this crap? Seasonal nature of the business. Okay, let's look at some risk factors. We are dependent on third-party suppliers. Most companies are. Fluctuations in raw materials. That affects most companies. Our dependency on contracts with U.S. and foreign government agencies subjects to a variety of risks that can materially reduce our profits or revenues. They've already mentioned the U.S. government. Okay, let's see. Full and open competition. The GLV contract. Yeah. So right here. Look at this. As an example, in February 2022, the U.S. Army released a request for proposal, RFP, for the recompete of the production contract for the JLTV family of vehicles. The DoD conducted a full and open competition for the follow-on production in which Oshkosh Defense participated. In February 2023, the DoD awarded the JLV follow-on contract to another company. JLV accounted for sales of $1.33 billion in fiscal year 2022. That's a lot of revenue, wouldn't you say? So it's just inherently unpredictable. It's like, you think of a company that just operates in the private sector. I think it's a little bit easier to try to make a prediction about the future than this, where some government clowns, the government, I'm a GS 12, 13, could just screw you over. Some government clown could just screw you over and screw over your investment. So just something to keep in mind. Not everybody in the government's clowns, okay? Our markets are highly cyclical, blah, 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 blah. Labor issues. USPS may not purchase quantities from us that we expected. So the USPS notified us that it selected us to build its NGDV. The IDIQ contract allows for the purchase of up to 165,000 units over 10 years. To date, we have received orders for the engineering to finalize the production vehicle design for tooling and factory build-outs for the first 50,000. So they have a contract with the USPS, but I think IDIQ means indefinite. Oh, crap. What does it mean? Indefinite quantity. It's something like that. But I think it gives the government flexibility for how many vehicles they could purchase. So if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, they're going to sell 165,000 vehicles to the USPS, maybe they won't. Maybe that'll fall through and that would materially potentially impact the stock price. Okay, yeah, some of this is just BS. Oh, there could be a pandemic. Prices could go up, raw materials. But overall, it's let's see. We may experience, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything that really stands out to me here. I mean, other than the general risks of investing in a company like this. Legal proceedings. As at December 31st, the estimated net liabilities for product and general liability claims totaled $41 million. That's a small fry. That's not significant. Okay, they talk about they got some pretty young executives overall. Pretty youngins. Probably a bunch of military people. Common stock repurchases. In May 2019, the company's board of directors approved a common stock repurchase authorization to buy. Okay, so they're buying back stock. We've already seen that. Looking at the stock price. Okay, let's look at management's discussion and analysis. This is pretty informative stuff. You want to read this because this is like the company's management, giving you additional details and information. You mostly get details either in management's discussion and analysis or in the notes of the financial statements. Those are two places. So let's see if we can see anything here. Let's see. Trying to see if there's anything here. Earnings per share. RG2. Earnings per share were lower than earnings per share for the year ended December. So their earnings per share went down largely due to manufacturing inefficiencies associated with supply chain disruptions, the absence of a carryback of a U.S. net operating loss the previous tax years, unfavorable cumulative catch-up adjustments in the defense segment, a loss in the settlement of a frozen pension plan, and higher new product development spending. So those are all the reasons that earnings per share dropped, but we'll see more in the financial statements. Frozen pension plan. Let's see. In aggregate, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so they're just kind of explaining in detail why their earnings per share went down. So there's this frozen pension plan, a charge with an anti-hybrid tax legislation, and a charge for an impairment of intangible assets. Okay, whatever. Let's see. Oh, but it increases dividend. It increases dividend. Fiscal year 2023 outlook. Am I sharing my screen? Yes, I am. The company estimates consolidated net sales will be in the range of $8.4 billion compared to $8.3 billion. So their sales are basically going to be flat. The company expects consolidated operating income will be in the range of $530 million, resulting in earnings per share in the range of 5.5. So their profit margin, their operating profit margin is expected to be 530 divided by 8 for 6%. How does that align historically? What is their normal operating profit margin? Where's it at? Where is it at? Am I blind? Here it is. So, I mean, roughly in line. I mean, sometimes their operating margin's over 6, sometimes it's under 6, but nothing out of the nothing unusual. Let's see. Demand remains strong. Order intake of $3.3 billion, leading the company's record backlog of $14 billion. Supply chains, blah, 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 blah. Okay. That sales approximately lower, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Here we go. Here's some consolidated results. So we can see their gross profit has gone down year over year. We can see their operating income has gone down year over year. Let's see. By geographic region. So they're increasing product shipments and sales in the United States, but a lot of their decline came from Europe and the rest of the world. So they're seeing growth of earnings in North America, but the rest of the world is going down. But the funny thing is, like, most of their money comes from the United States, by and far. This is not a international company. This is a U.S. company, basically, with some money outside the United States. But they have seen declining sales overseas, which has impacted their revenue growth. If it was just U.S., it would have grown 6.4%. So something to keep in mind. I mean, as long as U.S. is growing, and it is, at least over the last year, and it's the vast majority of revenues, then you'll be fine. Let's see what total percentage of revenues come from the U.S. I'm assuming that's the U.S. and I guess maybe Canada. 90% of revenues come from the United. This is a very U.S.-focused company, okay? Now, if U.S. revenues start declining, that's going to be bad, okay? Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the following, access equipment segment. Okay, so their access equipment segment also has declining margins. Let's look at the defense segment. Their defense segment has seen a massive hit to operating income, okay? Their sales have dropped pretty significantly. They got hit pretty hard in defense, okay? And that's the whole problem with the freaking the government, like relying on these contracts. And the government could change its priorities in a heartbeat. And then you get something like this where their freaking revenue drops 14% year over year. So government screwed them, but their revenue grew like pretty significantly for access equipment. Like access equipment's doing pretty good. Government is not. Let's see. Fire and emergency has gone. So they lost some revenue there. Margins have gone down pretty significantly. Commercial has done well. So some segments are good, some are bad. Okay. But you got to factor those all in when you're doing your analysis. All right. Pro forma. Okay, this is just their overall financial statements. I mean, we've already seen the profit and loss. Their margins are down. Their net income's down pretty significantly. They did buy back some stock, though. Let's see. Statement of cash flows. Let's see. Depreciation. Really nothing crazy here. I mean, overall, their operating cash flows stayed pretty consistent for the prior year. They're down a little bit. They are ramping up spending on property, plant, and equipment, though. That is a huge increase. They've more than doubled their spending on property, plant, and equipment. But they made a small acquisition. They sold some equipment. Okay, basically most of their investing went to expanding their factories, their plant, stuff like that. Let's look at the financing section. Proceeds from debt. Repayments of debt. They're paying off debt. Repurchases of common stock. Okay, they spent $155 million on buying back common stock, and they spent $97 million on dividends. Okay. Looks like, they've actually slowed down their stock buybacks compared to last year. But their dividend went up a little bit. Wow. All right, let's go look at the balance sheet. Where's the balance? Balance! Balance! Let's see. Well, let's look at the auditor's report. Okay, the financial statements are good. Nothing to worry about here. Estimated cost, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I didn't see anything crazy. Okay, opinion on internal control. Okay, yeah, nothing crazy in the auditor's report. So, okay, we already covered the income statement. Let's see. Nothing there. Wait, they have a pension plan? Why? Do they have a pension? That's interesting. Okay, let's look at the balance sheet. Cash, nothing crazy. Receivables, nothing crazy. Unbilled receivables, nothing crazy. Okay, nothing really crazy with current assets. Yeah, liquidity has actually gone up a little bit since the prior year, which is good, I would say. Property, plant, and equipment has gone. They've definitely made some investments in property, plant, and equipment. Goodwill's gone down a little bit. They had a tiny impairment, which affects the income statement, non-cash expense. Okay, basically, overall, there's nothing crazy going on with their assets. The only thing I really see is they made some investments, some bigger investments this year than the prior year in property, plant, and equipment. But their cash balance is fine. Their receivables are fine. Let's see if they're going to go bankrupt. Current liabilities, $2.4 billion versus $4.5 billion of current assets. Overall, they're doing okay. And if you look at their current liabilities, $696 million are from customer advances. So for upfront payments. So that eventually becomes revenue. So overall, their current liabilities really, unless you think that people are going to cancel contracts, are less than $2 billion. Which will be more than covered by their cash and receivables. And their inventories, which when they sell inventory, then they generate more cash. And they can use that to pay bills and whatever. Let's see. Debt. They paid off some long-term debt. We can see the debt has gone down. We saw that on the statement of cash flows. Long-term customer advances. So they got almost $1 billion up front that they're going to eventually, this is going to become revenue. So that's good. So a lot of their debt is really just upfront payments. I mean, I don't see any like alarm bells on their balance sheet. Unless you think people are going to cancel, then it's like, uh-oh. Then they got to give the money back. All right, let's look at equity. Additional paid in capital went up a little bit. Retained earnings went up a little bit. Accumulated other comprehensive loss went down. That's actually good. So they had a gain from comprehensive income, and they bought back some stock. So overall, their equity has gone down by $20 million. And that's because of share buybacks. So I don't see any like alarm bells here. Here's their statement of shareholders' equity. Let's see what went on here. There's a lot going on here, but basically 2021 starts here. 2022 starts here. 2022 ends here. And each column shows you each equity account and how it changed. So, for example, additional paid-in capital. Well, why did additional paid-in capital go from 792 to 806? Well, they had stock-based compensation expense and payment of stock-based restriction and performance shares. So overall, it was stock-based compensation. They're giving out, they're rewarding options to their employees. Let's see, retained earnings. So it started with $3.2 billion. They had $173 million of net income. They paid dividends of $97 million. So you see how net income increases retained earnings, dividends decrease it. So overall, their retained earnings increased because they paid less in dividends than they made in profits. Accumulated other comprehensive loss. These are profits and losses that don't hit the income statement, but still reflect the underlying fundamentals of the company. Let's see. They had some kind of gain on employee pension and post-retirement benefits, a little bit of losses on foreign currency translations, and a gain on derivative instruments. So overall, their accumulated other comprehensive loss became less negative. So they booked gains, they made money, but it didn't hit the income statement. It went around it. Common stock and treasury at cost. So they spent $155 million on buying back stock. Okay. Let's see. Shares tendered for. Oops, that's kind of weird. They put that under treasury stock. Basically, they bought back a bunch of shares. They spent $155 million of cash. Yep. Shares tendered for taxes on stock-based compensation. I guess they just lumped that all together in treasury. But overall, like nothing crazy is going on with this company's financial statements. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. You just have to understand the business, and you just have to understand the cyclical nature and the whole risks associated with investing in a company that derives a significant portion of its revenue. Because you could see that decline in revenue from government. I mean, it was pretty bad because they didn't win a contract. Like, that's painful, okay? But I don't see this company imminently going bankrupt. So that's kind of my thoughts. I mean, I don't know what else to say. We'll do some comments. Let's see. And if you want a video, you click that link. Really now, I'm interested in investing. Hell yeah. Strongman, why did you stop posting shorts? They're just lame. Speaking of stocks that profit from war, can you look at Kratos Defense and Security? Yeah, I can for $50. Was this a Lefebvre stock pick? I don't know. Did he? Ketos is the second largest holding in ARC Autonomous Techno. Well, that tells you right there it's probably trash. Revenue, my avenue. Yeah, Lefebvre was all in tomorrow. Oshkosh, my gosh cock. LOL workhorse. May as well stick tattoos. Yeah, I saw that. I was like, what? Workhorse and Rivian? I guess because they got awarded that contract for the USPS. So I guess they're competing with those companies in that segment. But obviously Workhorse isn't making like military vehicles, at least not to my knowledge. Doesn't say anything about AI. That's bullish. Would you do any OnlyFans video with Jeremy Lefebvre for $50? Yeah, you'd have to pay me way more than that. Hey, buddy, have you ever shorted stocks? No. Or don't you think so? You are the best. Keep it up. Just buy an index fund. LHX better. I don't even know what that is. All right, there's Oshkosh. This video did not get a lot of viewers. I guess nobody cares about it. But hey, I got paid for it. If you want to get a paid video, you send me money. Click that link. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.